Week one, first week. Yes, for the course outline of uh, uh, most meetings of developed. It depends on for oh, you can see zero, so you just subscribe for that. Morning, you just subscribe for free. And if you need to. Okay. Logging in. No, you don't have to. But for 365, yes. At 365, yes. Not.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on today's Hack365 Global. So we'll be treating a topic from curiosity to compromise. This talks about how simple curiosity can lead to full-blown breaches, compromise. That is how hacking begins. So we'll be having the usual theoretical aspects first, where Mr. David will take us through a few slides. Then we'll dive into Hack 365 to practicalize this in the virtual hacking labs. So please, if you have any questions, kindly note it down. He'll give room for questions and answers. And if there's anywhere you're not following, please kindly ask questions so that he'll take his time to explain. And please, are we all logged into Hack 365 Global? Because basically that's where the practical section of this training will be happening. All right, thank you everyone. Please, let's begin.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Mm. So, yeah, we now our topic already for today's session, which is from curiosity to compromise. So it's by method of objective, we want to understand the fundamentals and architecture of compromise. We believe that at the end of today, we should also understand how to find vulnerable systems and architecture. Also, learn how to use metasploits to exploit vulnerable systems and architecture also. So, by way of introduction, penetration testing, or often called pen testing, or ethical hacking also, is a simulated cyber attack against your own computer system. For the sake of this demonstration, or for the sake of what we are learning, we are simulating all of this to our own computer system. It's a simulated cyber attack against your own computer system, network, or web application to check for exploitable vulnerabilities. The primary goal is to identify security weaknesses before malicious attackers can find and exploit them. So it's more of a proactive security measure. It's more like hiring thieves to come and steal from you before the actual thief comes to steal from you. It's that simple. So unlike a simple vulnerability scan, which merely identifies known weaknesses, any of us familiar with vulnerability scanning here, or vulnerability scanning is? Okay, what about you, Ma? You, sir? Vulnerability scanning. All right, so unlike a very, very simple vulnerability scan, which merely identifies known weaknesses, the penetration test actively attempts to exploit these vulnerabilities to demonstrate the real-world impact of a successful attack. This process helps a system understand its security posture from an attacker's perspective. Also helps to assess the effectiveness of their defenses and prioritize remediation efforts to strengthen their network security. So what's the purpose of such exercise? One is to access security controls and identify weaknesses. Secondly, is to understand the attack surface of the network. Also to evaluate the effectiveness of patching and configurations. Also to meet compliance and regulatory requirements. And also to prevent unauthorized access and data breaches. What are the phases of the penetration test? First things first, we have the planning and scoping phase. So regular, more of a similitude of the 5 steps life cycle that we are familiar with of an ethical hacking process, where we talk about the reconnaissance or the information gathering, exploitation, and all of that. For the very first here, we have the planning and scoping phase. So in this phase, you want to identify your goals and your objectives. And for the purpose of identification of goals and objectives, we want to identify scope. So the scope is more of a boundary of what are the things to be allowed to be such tests and things that are out of scope. So you want to identify in-scope IP addresses, domains, and systems. What we mean is for such exercises, some things could be out of scope, probably because they are still in production or they are still in deployment, and we don't want you to test those things yet, so they could be out of scope. They also have rules of engagement. Rules of engagement would be more quote unquote what we call them the do's and don'ts. For example, we are asking you to perform an activity on our system, and we are telling you, no matter the kind of vulnerabilities you're going to test for, do not test for vulnerabilities that could lead to shutting down of servers, the likes of denial of service. This is because we have live clients on this particular infrastructure. So we do not want you to test for anything that could result to a breach in functionality of our system. That could be involved. So things like that are what we refer to as rules of engagement. What time do we want you to test from? Do we want you to test from 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. when everybody is sleeping, or what are the do's and don'ts? That's what you can find in the rules of engagement. Also, want to determine the testing type. Do we want to go the black box route, the white box route, and the gray box route? I believe you know what those are. Okay. So, yes, for this, we now begin to delve into network discovery and host discovery. So, for network discovery, it involves the process of identifying active hosts on the network. And I mean, when we mention identification of active hosts on the network, what is our go-to tool for that? Nmap, any other one? For identification of active hosts on our network. What? Zenmap. Okay, there's Zenmap. Okay. What other tool is our go-to tool to identify if a host is active on the network? We also have the ping command, which is everybody's go-to tool. So yes. That? Yes, ping, yes. So this involves methods like using ping scripts, which involves sending ICMP echo requests, or TCP UDP probes to determine which IP addresses are live and reachable. So, for example, using the ping command as written over there. Then we have port scanning. For port scanning, that's where we mentioned Nmap and Zenmap and the likes. So, used to enumerate the open, closed, or filtered ports on a target host. This is crucial for understanding which services are running and which services are accessible on the system. Now, when we have an open port, it means an application is actively listening for connection on that port. When we have a closed port, it means no application is listening, but the port is accessible. When we have a filtered port, we mean that there's a firewall or there's a router or there's a network obstacle preventing Nmap from determining if the port is open or closed. This is what it means. So for information gathering, when we begin to dive into network discovery, now, first things first, we want to identify if our hosts are active on the network, which we mentioned before, right? Now, to identify if your host is active, we use the ping command. Now, we use this to know if a host is alive or not. It's just like me knocking on the door, and I'm saying, knock, knock, and I'm waiting to hear who is there behind the door. To me, hearing who is there is me identifying that somebody is alive inside that structure. But here is the thing, I don't know who is inside. I don't know if it's a male, I don't know if it's a female, I don't know if the person is dark, if the person is short. Do you understand? Now, what Nmap does is Nmap takes it a bit further. Nmap doesn't just knock the door to know if someone is alive. Nmap tries to enter the building to confirm and give reports based on what it saw. Oh, yes, the person that is in this place is a fair person. And then it comes back and tells me, oh, this person is American because the person is fair and the person is tall and the person spoke with a kind of accent. Does it make sense? So now, due to such system of Nmap gathering information, you now have classification of how Nmap reports requests. Nmap can tell you a port is either open, closed, or it's filtered. What it means is when a port is open, it means Nmap has been able to identify that there is a particular application that is listening on that particular port. What I mean is this. For example, port 21. Port 21 is the FTP port, like we all know. But here is the thing, there are different types of FTP services. And we don't know if FTP is actually actively listening on that port. What Nmap does, Nmap tries to initiate a request using port 21. And if it gets a response, it tells you that, oh yes, FTP is actually open on this port. Now, sometimes Nmap tries to initiate the request. It knows the request, the port is open, but it cannot determine what is going on that particular port. This is because what happens is more of a I talk to you and you talk to me back. So if Nmap tries to talk to that particular port and the port doesn't talk back to Nmap tells you that port is closed. The reason is because the port is accessible, but it's not listening for connection. That's what it means. Now, some other cases, Nmap can tell you that, oh yes, this port is accessible. I know the port is alive. I know there's something running on the port, but I cannot determine what is working on that port. This is because most likely there are infrastructures in places, the likes of firewall. So take, for example, the port is behind the firewall. Because there's a firewall, Nmap cannot actively interact with that particular service on the port. Does it make sense so far? So that's what differentiates a filtered port from a closed port and an open port. Hope we are together. All right. So now, for service version detection, once open ports have been identified, Nmap can now interrogate the services that are running on those ports, determine the application name and the version number. For example, the likes of the Apache HTTP server 2.4.54, OpenSSH 8.91. This is invaluable for identifying potential vulnerabilities associated with specific software versions. What we mean here is, now that Nmap has been able to identify that, oh yes, there's a fair person inside here, Nmap can come and tell me that this person is probably Hispanic or something, based on the properties I was able to derive from our interaction. Now, this is the service version. Now, the reason why we take service version into consideration bulk of the times is these are the key pointers that tell us the vulnerabilities that can be associated with those versions. The reason why I say this is because, for example, FTP can be running on, FTP is a port, but FTP could be running a particular type of FTP version. It could be the Pro FTP something, probably 1.1.1.1. Now, if Nmap tells me that there is a Pro FTP version running on the FTP port, that is, Nmap has told me that we have the Pro FTP 1.1.1 running on the FTP port on this particular network. I, as the person that is the bystander or the attacker, could now take Pro FTP 1.1.1.1 as my research point to search for known vulnerabilities for that version, because that is what I'm going to be attacking. I hope it makes sense. Because the idea is, think of it like as you install having a laptop, but then the laptop has an operating system. Now, but then the operating system and the operating systems can be different. For example, I asked you what operating system are you using? I tell me I'm using a Windows operating system. It can be correct, and she can also say she's using a Windows operating system too. But here's the thing: she could be using Windows 7, and you're using Windows 10, but it's both Windows. That's the thing. But then Windows 7 could have bugs that are stay with Windows 7 alone, and Windows 10 might not have bugs related to. So that's how Nmap comes up with service version detection. And it's not just service versions. It can also give us information ranging from the type of operating system that the FTP server was installed upon. Probably it was on the Ubuntu system, it was a Windows system. Nmap does a good job telling us a bunch of those information. That's why it's our major point of entry for anything we're doing. We want to see as much information as we can gather using Nmap, right? Then also vulnerability detection. So while Nmap itself isn't a full-fledged vulnerability scanner, it's Nmap scripting engine, which is the NSE, allows users to write an execute script that can detect specific vulnerabilities in configuration and even backdoors. So what is mean with this? So we can scan for vulnerabilities. We can scan for what is going on. Want to discover a number of things from our targets using Nmap. But what we are saying now is Nmap has a feature that allows us run scripts on that particular network or that particular port, depending on how you want to go about it. Now, the reason why this is a key points to note is because most times attackers can leverage Nmap to do a lot of things. What I'm saying is there have been situations where people think they got exploited, probably through using a backdoor or something. Probably the person was able to get credentials using a backdoor or whatever the cases were. But sometimes Nmap does a good job. If I know how to tweak my scripts well enough, I can use Nmap to perform exploitation. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. It's just a thing of how well do you know how to use the tool? How well do you know do you actually know what the tool does and how to tweak your way around it? Because as a matter of fact, it is as crazy as you spawning a shell with just Nmap. It is as crazy as you accessing the content of a particular service with just Nmap scan. You didn't have to go and do external. Although that's where manual exploitation comes into play, because it's more of a manual thing to do, not automatic. Are we together? So Nmap gives us the opportunity to write and execute scripts that can detect specific vulnerabilities. And of course, it comes with its own scripts that we can use to test. So how does Nmap work? So imagine Nmap as a detective sending out various type of knock-knock messages to houses on the streets. Um, so for a ping scan, Nmap first tries to see which houses respond to a simple ping. This tells us which houses are occupied. For a port scan, for the occupied houses, Nmap tries to knock on different doors to know which of the doors are open. So you've entered the building, but then you want to know which of the doors can I access? Can I access the living room? Can I access the parlor? Can I access the kitchen? That's what gives rise to, this port is open, that port is open, that port is open. Same network, by the way. Now for service detection, for the open networks, Nmap might try to ask who is there, and then in different ways try to figure out what kind of business is being conducted behind the door. If it's a web server, it will tell you it's a web server because of the way that application responded to it. Of course, they don't respond the same way. For operating system detection, it's based on how the houses respond to various subtle cues, like the way it closes the door, the rhythm of its knock. Nmap can guess what kind of architecture the houses have. For example, windows, lineups, and the likes. Then we now move to the methodology of scanning networks using an Nmap that we mentioned. So I want to believe that this is majorly covered in the module for our trainings for really from the first week down to, so most likely we'll have a part 2 series for this module. So we'll just take the part 1 and then next week, once we have gone through that, we'll continue from where we stopped there. All right, so for IP addressing, we know the regular IPv4 format of addressing, then we know subnets. We're also aware of private and public IPs. Then for ports, we have the normal range of ports ranging from 0 to 65535, TCP versus UDP. Then for common ports that we find in major networks, we have the HTTP ports, HTTPS, SSH, and SMB. Who knows what the SMB port is? SMB. SMB. What's the meaning of SMB? SMB is the server message block. The server message block port. The SSH is the secure shell port. There's SMTP. SMTP is the simple mail transfer protocol, which is responsible for handling mailing systems. We have SMB, which is used for file sharing within Windows computers or systems. Now we have SSH, which is a way of communication between systems and servers. Then we have the HTTPS, of course, which is the hypertext transfer protocol, but the secured one. Now we have the F, and we also have the HTTP. We're also aware of what to be aware. Okay. Server message block. Yes. Yes. So we're also aware of firewalls, which is responsible for filtering traffic by ports, by IP, by protocol, by anything, as long as by predefined rules, basically. Whatever I tell the firewall to do is what it's going to do. Exactly. So we also have IDS and IPS. Who knows the difference between an IPS and an IDS? Huh? Okay, yeah. So one is responsible for just detection, while the other one is for detection and prevention. So one is proactive and the other is reactive, basically. Right? So now for Nmap, we want to look at timing templates on Nmap. So Nmap timing templates are used to control and adjust how aggressively it sends packets during a scan. This is definitely going to affect the duration of the scan, the detectability by firewalls and IDS, and the accuracy. So what we mean is this. Now, because we are trying to gather information on a target using Nmap, we want to note that we are sending packets because, like I said, Nmap is not just somewhere far. and scanning. Nmap is actually interacting with these targets. So the idea is we want to see as much information we can gather from a target without the target flagging us to be malicious. That's the idea. So and then as much as you want to gather more information, you discover that you get to send more more packets and the likes. But then we want to look at how we can implement timing templates to ensure that as much as we are gathering more information, we are trying to evade detection by firewalls. Because if a firewall flags you, sometimes you can actually have an open connection. And because of the type of scan you run, probably you ran a very aggressive scan. The firewall is going to tell you that port is filtered because it seems to be as though you are trying to attack the system using Nmap. So for example, because of this particular notion, the idea is this: the faster a scan is, the more noisy it is, as you can see there. So if the scan is too fast, as you see here, it is noisy, and then it gets to get missed response. So for you to have a stealthy scan to avoid evade detection, you want to go slower. I hope it makes sense. So when we use, for example, nmap-ss, SS means stealth by parameter. So S, the capital letter S here, stealth. S, the capital letter L means stealth. So you are going the stealthy way. So when we use capital letter S, I think T0. T0 is the lowest time range when it comes to determining factors, because we have T0 to T5. So T0 is the lowest. So we are going T0, means perform a very, very stealthy scan, and you send your packets at a very, very slow pace. Don't make it too fast. Now your scan is going to come slower because you will get a very, very you will get your responses slower as far. You're going to wait quite a number of times before you get your responses. But this is the thing, you perform the stealthy scan. So that's why it gives rise to the notion that we say that hackers are very, very patient people. The reason is because we are trying to evade detection. So it's not as if I cannot get the results on time. I can, but I'm trying to evade detection and to make sure that I get everything I can get. So I will go slower. So if I run a fast scan on an internal LAN, imagine I go nmap, I can SL, which is still stealthy, but I decide to make my timing template with a numeric value of 4. This is going to be way faster than when it is 0. So I'm going to get a faster result, but we'll get to be practical, we'll get to see that we get responses faster. But here's the thing: the firewall might have flagged you already or logged you already, and you wouldn't know. Case in point. So now we'll move to the type of scans. For the type of scans we need Nmap, we have number one, the TCP sync scan. So the TCP sync scan is also known as the stealth scan, which is the default scan of Nmap. Then we also have the TCP connect scan, full open scan, which is the Nmap, as you can see, I think ST. That's because we are running a TCP connect scan. Now, the TCP connect scan uses the regular TCP three-way handshake. Are we familiar with that? The TCP three-way handshake. TCP three-way handshake. Are we familiar with that? Exactly. That's what happens in the TCP connect scan. Then we have the UDP scan, which is the, as you can see, it's just a thing of alphabets. UDP is, I think, U. TCP is, I think, T. The ACK scan is, I think, A. It's also known as the aggressive scan also. And then we also have the null scan, the thin scan, XMAS scan. It's just alphabets, basically, and alphabetic values. Then for the service detection scan, so let's say I'm trying to run a particular scan, and for this particular scan, I want to know the version of the service. I use SB. SB means version. B there for the version. Aggressive detection is A for aggressive. Comprehensive detection is C. C is for comprehensive. Vulnerability scanning. So vulnerability scanning is the scan I told us about, where we use scripts to test for a particular vulnerability on a particular protocol. So what I mean is, for example, I want to believe that let's say OpenSSH 9.6.1 or whatever the case that is running on the SSH port of a particular network for a service. I want to believe that there is a particular vulnerability associated with that particular version. What I can do is to tell Nmap to use the database that it has access to on the cloud, use a bunch of scripts to test for vulnerabilities on that particular port. That's what the script vulnerability tag does there for me. So it's not just searching for whether it is open or whether it is alive or whether now. I can also take it a step further. We'll take a look. As you can see, here is the script. So we have the nmap string hyphen target hyphen. So because we're using nmap, let's say I want to specify SSH. SSH runs on what port? Port 21. Port 22. Thank you very much. So I just identify this parameter. So for example, I want to use the script vulnerability tag. I use nmap dash dash script one, my target IP, then I identify hyphen P for port. Yes. Yes. Yes, definitely. Yes, definitely. For yes. So here's the thing. So for systems that use bulk of DHCP, that use dynamic IP assignment system, we find bulk of them on web servers. Now, when we begin to delve into web servers, Nmap doesn't necessarily become a systemic tool for us. The reason is because bulk of the bugs and the vulnerability involved on web servers are found on the web application itself, not on the server. I don't know if it makes sense. So the idea of having multiple, so what actually happens is this. Take, for example, Google. Google doesn't have one server. Google has multiple servers. The reason is because they are using what we call load balancers. They're trying to ensure that denial of service is reduced at a very, very minimum. So they try to split the load across several servers. That's why we have multiple servers of an infrastructure like Google. Now, so if we have, let's say, for example, a web application that is running on something like that has multiple servers, because they are trying to ensure that, oh yes, at one point in time, we don't want to have a situation of lack of availability of data because of denial of service on a particular server or such. We are trying to attack, we do not target the server. What we target is the web itself, what we can see, what everybody has access to. We don't want to go the server out because we know most times we're not going to even get anything responsible. Now, for web servers, you have nothing to do with the IP addressing. You do not test anything that has to do with the IP address. What you are testing is the application itself, the application's framework, the language it was written in. But now, yes, now this is the thing. Nmap is called network mapping. Nmap is heavily for networks. I don't know if it makes sense. So if you're using Nmap, it means you are sure of the IP address, because Nmap is a network mapping tool. When it comes to enumeration, now enumeration is a very, very big word and it's quite elaborate. Now, Nmap is just one tool out of so many enumeration tools. When it comes to web exploitation, enumeration goes a different way. That's where we begin to talk about subdomain enumeration and directory enumeration. It's still enumeration, but it's a different kind of enumeration because the environment has changed. But when it comes to networking, we begin to use Nmap because we are in a different environment. When it comes to networking, there are so many tools we can use to enumerate. We can even use netcat to enumerate. We can use Nmap to enumerate. There are some systems that will not allow you to interact with them using Nmap. For example, some Active Directories, I believe you know what Active Directories are. You cannot interact with the Active Directory via Nmap because they know you will interact with them via Nmap. So, for example, you can decide to ping a system, and they most likely might have deactivated the ICMP protocol that we saw that the ping command uses, because ping command sends ICMP packets, which we are aware. They might have deactivated it. Yes, definitely. Definitely. You are thinking based on the IP address that you are sure. So when you are testing a network, what happens is we add it to the network. We add it to the network, and then you see the IP address you are testing. For example, you have a bunch of hosts. You have a bunch of hosts. For example, we give you a series, you have 192.168.56.0/24. So let's say we have about 255 hosts on that PC. So you have like 255 machines or 255 systems compromised or whatever the cases are. Nmap gives you the opportunity to run a scan on all of them at the same time. So based on the results you get on the scan of all of them, you can now begin your deductions. Okay, do I want to target this guy and leave this guy? Do I want to target this guy and leave this guy? So that's how it happens. When you have connection to a bunch, it's a broadcast network. Let's call it a broadcast network now. Does it make sense? Now, all right, thank you. So then we're now moving to the Metasploit framework. So this is an open source exploitation framework that is maintained by Rapid7. It contains a suite of tools for exploitation of known vulnerabilities, payload generation, post-exploitation, auxiliary tasks, scanning and pausing, creating custom exploits. Now, why Metasploit? Number one, it's used to save time, includes hundreds of written exploits. And of course, as CVEs come out yearly, Metasploit tries to update its library. Then it's modular, it's easy to plug in exploits, payloads, and targets. It's easy to use. It's just a GUI tool that can be used by anybody. And then it's widely used. Likes of OSCP, CH, red teaming, and penetration testing exercise rely on Metasploit. Now, what's the role of Metasploit in the PT life cycle? The Metasploit framework is a powerful open source platform that significantly aids in the scanning through auxiliary modules, exploitation, and post-exploitation phases of penetration testing. It provides a vast collection of exploits, payloads, and tools that streamline the process of identifying and leveraging vulnerabilities. Now, what are the major concepts in the Metasploit framework? First things first, we have the MSF console, which is the main CLI interface for interacting with models. Second of all, we have the MSF Venom. MSF Venom is a payload generator tool used to generate payload. This to generate malware. This to generate anything. What I'm saying is I can use Metasploit to generate the malicious software that I'll send to you. That's what I'm saying. Using the MSF Venom library or the MSF Venom tool. Then we have modules. Modules contain exploits, payloads, and auxiliary tools. Sessions are used to track current shells and Metacritic sessions. Database, of course, you know what database is, a collection of data, and exactly. So optional PostgreSQL, DB for saving tools and hosts. So what are the major key terms in Metasploit? One, we have payload, which is the code delivered after exploitation. Metacritic. Second of all, exploit, the code that takes advantage of the vulnerability. Third of all, we have module, a reusable unit in Metasploit. We have the listener, which is used to wait for a reverse shell to connect back. Sessions represent an open connection to the exploited target. Do you understand? Do you understand the difference between a payload and an exploit? And an exploit. The difference. Ma? The difference between a payload and an exploit. What's the difference between the both of them? Okay.
While export is actually or any comparability must exist on the export. And it's okay with create
Okay.
payload. So a good example of the payload phishing
Okay.
deliver the payload phishing
So how do you work together?
The exploit needs to be
Oh. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of correct. Yeah. So as you mentioned, the exploit, what did you say again, sir? You said
the exploit
you need the payload to get to the target. Okay, so I like to use analogies to understand everything. That's the truth. Because the English can be confusing sometimes.
Well, I know that, for example, as I make sure you need to find that picture.
Okay.
Where
Yep.
that person is,
Okay.
maybe you make it easier or make it more friendly.
Okay. So, like I said, I like to use analogies to understand things better, so I don't forget. So I think of it, think of the whole operation like a robbery operation. You're trying to rob a bank or something. Now, for you to have entered the bank door, let's say somebody is trying to rob this place, armed robbers. Now, for them to have entered that door, you mean that door was ajar. That door was not locked. That's what it means. That's the exploit. The key, the padlock they broke to gain access is the exploit. Are we together? The vulnerability that's the exploit. Because they have to do that first. If they didn't do that, there was no way they would have gotten access. So they have to boggle the padlock first before they gain access. That's the exploit. But here's the thing. After you boggle the padlock, an armed robber has to enter inside. The armed robber entering inside with his gun is the payload. It's always the exploit before the payload. It's always the exploit before the payload. What I mean is this. An attacker sends you a malicious software that is, for example, let's say a game or something, or whatever application he sends to you. Now, when he sends you that application is the exploit. Exactly, that application is the exploit. But here's the thing, behind that application is a keylogger. The keylogger is what gives the attacker remote access to you. That keylogger is the payload. I don't know if it makes sense. That's the payload. The exploit has to go first. So this is the thing. Sometimes your exploit will go, but your payload will not work. I mean, it means that there are times more often than not that the exploit would work fine. Nothing is wrong with the exploit, but your payload would not be able to work because there has been, quote unquote, a breach in connection. So, for example, you send me a malicious software and I find a way to sanitize the software. Your exploit has gone, fine and good, but your payload has gone. So, for example, sometimes you are trying to trigger shell on a web application. You know what a shell? We know what a shell is: remote access, remote code execution. So we're trying to trigger a shell on an application on a particular network. And for us to do that, let's say we have to go through the command injection route. Or let's say we did a file upload vulnerability where we're able to inject malicious code to a piece of file. Let's say, for example, upload profile picture. And then I uploaded a profile picture that is malicious. Probably I added something to the back of the profile picture and I sent it to be my profile picture. Now that's the exploit I sent. So forth. That's because at the back end, as the attacker, I'm trying to see how I can gain access to where those pictures are stored. Because I should be able to have an access to where the pictures are stored by triggering the payload I set at the back of the picture. But here is the thing sometimes. Some applications have whitelistings. Probably there's a firewall or something that prevents me from communicating with my payload. That's one. Number two, there could be an EDR. Number three, there could be command and control might have been switched off on their server. Probably they find a way to switch off command and control so that nobody can communicate via remote access. That way, my exploit worked, but my payload did not work. Meaning it is not, they work hand in hand for a complete compromise, but it does not mean that because one works, the other one would work. But for you to have a complete compromise, both have to work together. Are we together? Thank you. Yeah.
So, how did you say the person downloaded
Next plate.
the expert?
Yes.
So that means that they're like looking to talk for you.
Yes.
So now you said that inside the lady program. So how does this work? Like this, for example, when you download that has something.
Yeah.
So what exactly is done after that? I need to start something.
Payloads are dependent on what they were designed to do. For example, the reason why I give an example of a keylogger is because a keylogger is an example of what I can decide my payload to do. So you know what we yes, exactly. It depends on what I want the payload to do. For example, the reason why I mentioned the keylogger is because I might want that particular malicious software that I sent to you, the malware, I might want it to record strokes of every action you take. So for example, I might decide to go the keylogger route. So what I do is I send you a malicious software that has a keylogger, and you don't know. Exactly. We've heard of applications that mine Bitcoin on your laptop, and you don't know that it's mining your laptop is mining Bitcoin. Exactly. That's what that payload is doing. It's dependent on what the attacker wants to do. Exactly. Exactly. But the thing is, the attacker cannot go full on like that. So that's to hide behind an exploit. There has to be something that was exploited first before we were able to gain full compromise. So that first point of contact is the exploit. Are we together? So when I try to do command injection on an application, and let's say I type blah 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 blah, I type a bunch of code to the application. Let's say I was supposed to put my username and I put a particular malicious code so that the application, let's say in the malicious code, I did it in such a way that it's supposed to trigger a remote connection for myself where I am. The whole code I typed for the application is the exploit. That piece of code that I gave the application is my exploit. But the session I was able to open from my end is the payload. So if my exploit didn't go, there was no way I would have gotten my payload up and running. So that's just a sequence, one first before the other. Yeah. So just more explanations. Modules, these are the building blocks of Metasploit. They are each designed for specific tasks or specified tasks. So for example, we have the likes of an exploit. What's an exploit? An exploit is a code that takes advantage of a specific vulnerability. I mentioned that before. The vulnerability exists, then the exploit takes advantage of that vulnerability. So what I'm saying is I go to the door, I said that the padlock is not well functioned, and I break it. Breaking the padlock is my exploit. That's because there was a vulnerability of the padlock that was not well placed properly. Now, to gain unauthorized access to achieve a specific objective, for example, remote code execution. But then now here's what a payload is. A payload is a small piece of code that the exploit delivers to the target after successful exploitation. So the payload defines what actions you want the exploited system to perform. For example, open a shell, do something, that thing that I want that thing to do, payload exactly.
Opening a shell means like opening
Huh? The opening the shell is a session, having access to the server. You just access basically shell access. So how you go about delivering of exploit to get it is the exploit, and having a shell is the payload. So that's what we're saying. For auxiliaries, we have auxiliaries to the modules that perform tasks other than direct exploitation. This includes scanners, port scanners, vulnerability scanners, login boot process, denial of service tools, pausers, and administrative functions. They gather information to perform specific actions without delivering a payload. So auxiliaries. So an auxiliary is different from an exploit. So in Metasploitable, you don't just have the options of exploiting. There are some modules that are there for you to scan. For example, this guy is running, let's say, an SSH service. But for me to carry out actual vulnerability scanning, to know what I'm testing for, I need to know the exact version of SSH that guy is running on. But Nmap cannot really tell me because Nmap could not. So Metasploit has modules that have the ability of doing proper scans just for information gathering. So now that's not an exploit. That's an auxiliary. So you didn't have to exploit anything. You just had to get information from me. So anything, exactly. So from there now, I can now begin my own process. So anything that does not necessarily have to have to do with me exploiting anything using Metasploit as an auxiliary. That's why they are called auxiliaries. So we have scanners, we have brute forcers. Those things are called auxiliaries. So we have encoders. There are tools that are used to encode payloads to bypass basic antivirus signatures and avoid bad characters. Bad characters that might break your exploits. In navigating Metasploit or the MSF console, we have major tools that you want, major commands that you want to be familiar with. We have the search, we have the use, we have show options, set, show payloads, set payloads, run exploits. All of this we will see that when we begin to go into the metasploitable machines so far. I hope we're able to download our metasploitable machines on our PCs as instructed. Are we able to download the metasploitable machine on our laptops? Were we able to download the metasploitable machines on our laptops as instructed? As earlier communicated. Okay. So and let's dive into protocols and attack vectors. These are the pathways or the protocols that a cyber attacker uses to gain unauthorized access to a computer system. Network or an application. First things first, we want to look at Telnet. Which one's on port 23? Then you have the file transfer protocol, FTP. Almost everybody has heard of FTP before, right? FTP, yeah. Which one's on port 21? We have the standard message block, as earlier said, SMB. Which one's on port 139 and port 1445? So we have the simple mail transfer protocol, the SMTP, port 25, secure shell, port 22, and my structured query language, MySQL, which was on port 3306. Now, Telnet. Telnet is an application layer protocol that is used on the internet or local area networks to provide a bi-directional interactive text-oriented communication facility using a virtual terminal connection. In simpler terms, it allows you to remotely log into a computer and execute commands as if you were sitting in front of the computer. Are we together? Do we understand? Exactly. So it allows you to remotely log into another computer and execute commands as if you were sitting in front of the computer. Okay. But then here is the thing. Telnet does not encrypt the authentication process or any subsequent data. This makes it highly vulnerable to eavesdropping and credential theft. Are we together? So, eavesdropping and credential theft. So here is what happens. So now Telnet is more of an outdated communication protocol now, although people see, some applications still use it, some servers and systems still use it. So what used to happen is this. With Telnet, if I decide to connect to let's say, what's your name? So let's say Stephanie has a company and all I have about Stephanie is her IP address. Now, when she was configuring her system, because she is an admin, when Stephanie boots into her system, she sees Stephanie's company and she sees, oh, probably she might have left a note to a company that helps her remember her password and whatever the case. So let's say on her homepage. You know the way you log into, you want to boot into your Windows and then you see the homepage and then you see the opportunity for you to see your username and the way to type in your password, then you see your password hint or whatever the case. Now, normally, with Telnet, when you want to connect to a system remotely like that, Telnet does not have any form of encryption or any form of security measure as to connection. Telnet goes and gives you that exact dump and pastes it for the attacker to do as long as he's trying to log in. So from there, enumerated guesses can start. Because as an attacker, all I just needed to know was my IP address. And then I typed Telnet, let's say 192.168.56.1. And I clicked on enter. And then I saw welcome to Stephanie's company. Now type in your password and username. I already saw Stephanie. I know that's a password. I know that's a username. Are we together? So it was a very, very insecure way of communication, basically. That was one. Number two, if we were in a particular local area network where all we used was Telnet, the chances of me eavesdropping as to both of these connections was very, very high because there was no form of encryption. man in the middle was just people, just as easy as passing paper. Just think of it like that. So Telnet was a very, very bad communication system. So because of that, we now have to introduce SSH. SSH became an upgrade of Telnet, or have the secure share. So with SSH, it's either you know the pass, you have to know the password and the username before you can log in of the particular user you are trying to log into before you can log in. Before you know anything about what is going on, you have to be sure about the password and the username. That's where SSH came. SSH is like an upgrade of Telnet. That's what it means. The NFTP, file transfer protocol, is the standard network protocol used to transfer computer files from the server to a client on the computer network. One of the oldest and most widely used application layer protocols for file transfer. Some of the common NFTP vulnerabilities include anonymous login enabled, default or weak credentials, directory traversal. An anonymous login enabled means FTP by default comes with anonymous login. Like you can actually log in anonymously. Sometimes developers can decide to leave information there, and for the sake of that, people can gain high value information from there. Then default credentials, which is normal, weak credentials for logging in. And then directory traversal, which is giving access to things inside the protocol, but without you knowing the exact path to where it is. We have SMB, a server message block. The network file sharing protocol that allows the application on the computer to read and write files and to send services from server programs in the computer network. It is most commonly associated with Windows file and printer sharing, but also used on Linux systems via Samba. 4. SSH, or secure shares. It is a cryptographic network protocol operating network services securely over an unsecured network. Its most common application is for remote command line logging and remote command execution, effectively providing a secure replacement for Telnet. So that's why we have SSH. Provide. Then we have HTTP. Everybody knows HTTP now. Everybody knows. You know what HTTP is now? So it's the foundation for data communication for the World Wide Web, an application layer protocol for transmitting hypermedia documents such as HTML, and it's a protocol that allows you to load web pages. So that concludes our theory session. I've been talking too much for today. So right now, we'll just move to our metasploitable VM and see what we can pull out of there. And then for labs, we have a number of labs to look at: protocol hacking 1, protocol hacking 2, protocol hacking 3, and the advanced labs. So for that, we'll just move to Hack365 Global. Try to log in as usual. Log in now. Hack365. Okay. Are we here? So for today, we're told to look at protocol hacking 1, protocol hacking 2, and protocol hacking 3. So advanced. Are you there? Is this are we all here now? Right. So for this lab, it says sorry, the scattered. Let me for those move. Okay, so here it says many other FTP servers have weak or vulnerable configurations. In pen testing, it is important to test FTP for anonymous login access, weak credentials, known service vulnerabilities, clear text credentials in traffic. If not using FTPS or SFTP in this lab, will exploit VSFTP 2.3.4, which has a backdoor vulnerabilities triggered by a malicious username. The lab works with tax one, enumerate the FTP service, run a service version scan, nmap, blah, blah, blah. Confirm the FTP is open and running, launch Metasploit, open Metasploit, MSF console. So let's just get straight to this. So as discussed earlier, we're to install VirtualBox and have our Metasploitable machine. I think you can, if you have that, you can just follow. Yes, and open Metasploitable. So you said you have yours running, right? So you can just Follow. But yes, do you have metasploitable? Different one as well. Okay, yes, you can. Where do you have Kali?
I think my
It's on your.
VPN,
Okay.
my carry
Ah. So how do you want them to communicate? They have to have a way to communicate to each other. Where is your virtual? Where's your Kali? Where's your metasploitable? Ah, why did you put them in two different places? But you can also put your metasploitable on VirtualBox also inside Oracle. Okay, you downloaded software. You downloaded metasploitable. So you have to download metasploitable. No, there is no metasploitable inside Kali. You have to download. All right, so we're supposed to download metasploitable. This is going to be our client server or demonstration for all of the things we want to demonstrate today. So first things first, let me put this terminal on the okay. Zoom. All right, so first things first, we want to identify the IP address of our client machine or quote unquote our metasploitable machine. So yes, you can use it. If they can communicate, definitely you can use it. So now I want to identify the IP address of our client machine. So if we type in ifconfig quickly, we discover that we are connected to this network. And this network is using the network adapter, the VBoxnet here. So what we will just do is to perform a quick net discover scan and perform a quick net discover scan and we identify our interface to be the VBoxnet zero, meaning run a discovery command to discover the amount of live services on that adapter because I'm connected to the adapter. ifconfig is to know the IP address of our laptop on all adapters that it is connected to. Are we together? So when I run, okay, it tells me to be sudo, so I have to run that with a sudo command to discover the live host on a particular adapter, if there are live hosts on a particular adapter that I am connected to. So we are doing this because we are trying to identify the IP address of our Kali machine. So upon performing that, we'll just wait a little while and see what net discover comes up with for us. So what I did is to identify the network adapter that my metasploitable and my Kali are on together. And that's the adapter I'm listening on. So as you can see here, you can see that it was able to give us two IP addresses. Let me just end this command. Can we see that it was able to spawn up two IP addresses? One is the 192.168.56.100. The other is the 192.168.56.102. So we have to identify which of them is metasploitable, first of all, or which of them is our client this time around. So first we'll try to ping 192.168.100. You see that we can ping it. Net discover. Net discover interface, I, then the adapter. So the person to your Kali. Oh, I, small letter I, then the adapter name. Right. So we find that we are running on 100. So let's try to perform an nmap scan on 192. The Kali and the metasploitable, they have to both be on. Yes. Because we are assuming that you have access to your client and your client is on, you have to be on both. So yes, they have to be in the same network adapter. Huh? Whatever adapter they are using, but they have to be together on the same network adapter.
Is that why please don't connect to Wi-Fi?
Yes. Please don't connect to Wi-Fi. Dot 100. So if we perform an nmap scan on 192.168.100, we get to discover something, and that's not metasploitable. Let's try the second IP address result. Let's
So you
do,
don't make a relatively,
yes.
you cannot do that.
That's not our target. That's not our target. So what? Let's try the second. Oh yes, and we're able to get this.
Not our target,
That's not who we are trying to access. We took a guess because we saw two IP addresses from our discover command, so we don't know which of them is our target. Right? From the beginning. Okay. So first things first, we had to perform a discover scan first to identify the IP address of our metasploitable. Have we gotten the IP address of our metasploitable now? What did the discover scan? What was the result of the discover scan?
So we said we net discover.
Yes, face the adapter name. Oh, that's no discover normally carries. Yes, that's correct. But it's IF config. Yeah. And that's net discover. So let me just split my screen left and right so you can see it again. So net discover. Yes.
that's, oh, that's the box name. Yeah, what has it?
Is the adapter that we and our target are connected to.
Like the Wi-Fi.
Yes. You said VBox. VBox net. Just think of it as the adapter that metasploitable and Kali are connected to. Are you using VBox net or some? What are you using? What I'm saying is when you type F on your laptop, what comes out? What do you get as a result? Yes, you use the one that you are using. Use the one that like the name will change. Yes. No, you would, for example, if you are using VirtualBox, if you take the metasploitable to VirtualBox, you will see VBoxNet. Because VBoxNet is from VirtualBox. Remember, I'm using VirtualBox too. That's why I'm saying VBoxNet. If you use VMware, it might be a different name entirely. Yeah. ENSP03. Now, you would have to confirm if that is the same adapter that metasploitable is on. Do you understand what I'm saying? So now, when you net discover and then use that adapter's name, don't use VBoxNet. Yes. So let me just collapse the stop terminal.
find out the IP address of it.
Yes.
Then after you find out the IP address, you now use your to find
IP address
IP address.
of your target. Have you seen the IP address of Metasploitable? We're able to scan and confirm that it's Metasploitable. Just run an nmap scan and confirm. No, you scan on your card. You just run an nmap scan as we did earlier on here. Check your DM, check your DM. Check your DM, check your DM. So you saw two also. So try the second one. What did you get? Okay. Are you the same this exact result? Exact, so now you can communicate. That means you have access to your Metasploitable. Okay, that means you're on the same track. All right. So okay, yes. So remember we spoke about types of nmap scan. We spoke about types of nmap scan. And huh? Okay, are we on the same page now? So now we spoke about the types of different nmap scans. So we'll just um practicalize that now. So we spoke about the service version type of scan. What was the version? So now we identify that there's an FTP service. But we want to know the version of the FTP. There is an SSH service. We want to know the version of the SSH. What we do now is to use the item S version, that is SV for version. Are we together? Because it's the version we're looking for now. 192.168.56.102. This is our IP address. So if it fits, your IP address is going to be different, definitely. We hit enter. Now, if you notice, our scan took a little bit of time. Did you notice? That's because it is the default time range, which is 0. Now, let's try something different this time around. Let's add a time range of 5, which is going to be fast. Are we together? Now, let's observe. Are you getting the same results over there? Can you see the versions of all the protocols as shown here too?
So
the range of timing is from 0 to 5. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How fast you want it? So exactly. So the VSFTPD is running on. So FTP is running on VSFTPD 2.3.4. So you can see now, if for the sake of information gathering, now if I'm going to exploit FTP, what I'm going to be looking to exploit is to exploit VSFTPD 2.3.4 because that's the exact version that is running on FTP. Yes, of that version. Are we together? Are we clear? 2.3. As you can see, look at it, 2.3.4. Yes, 2.3.4. That's what I'm going to search for. What I'm saying is this. For example, I can just copy this guy and just do a regular internet search. Vulnerability. And as you can see, there are several vulnerabilities for that particular version. Are we together? If I decide to go the exploit DB route, which is regular Google docking, you can see we have access to it tells us VSFTPD 2.3.4 backdoor command execution. Is it coming together now? It's making more sense now. Exactly.
So basically, what we are seeing is that as we check for the actual address of the post, we now found that we have from their version of XP, they have the version that they are using as the vulnerability.
Yes. So for SSH the same way, all of that the same way.
So from all those information that are there, you can just take the vulnerability of all of them.
Yes.
To attack.
Yes, this is several of the network. So that's so now what we can now now that we've seen all of the versions that are running, we can just pick a number of them and decide to see what we can pull off from them. So let's say we can do FTP. Let's use Metasploitable as Metasploit. Metasploit and Metasploitable are the same thing. So let's go to the MSF console as we discussed in our theories today. So we just look up our MSF console. So here is our MSF console. Can you see that? All right. So as you can see, now because remember, we know what we are looking for, right? We know what we are looking for. We found the version of vulnerability we are searching for, which is VSFTPD 2.3.4, right? What this means is we can just come to MSF console and do a search. Type search VSFTPD 2.3.4. Now this is, you understand? So now we are moving, it's a chain. We are moving from one stage to another. Once we hit enter, we see that Metasploit has an exploit for us. Can we see that? Which is yes. So now, we also believe that we just tell Metasploit number for that is the village. And we go to the expert. So for us, we will arrive not for the file, the option, and so we just see those companies which is which is very from our first innovation. So for us, we are then it's set out of it to follow idea. I was a big actually network.
When you copy,
One Network we have a scan of to know version that we want for everything in our system. As a matter of fact, if you when you want to get used to that, I think it's sort of the outcome. Going to be against to put our outlook to 190 with 150 to 30 to 100. We have to center and that option as if that's elevated. So,
after the implementation of all that you are doing. Now, okay, get. This is the question. So, set all that you all the information. Now, this is the question of how you apply it. Not all the
how it's simple, you don't know how we can reduce it. You can see what it is again. Exactly. Remember yourself, that's what we need. What are our thoughts about that? But I have to be negative, I couldn't what on what I would do, that's really good. And for whether going to be out on this, like, you don't know. Let's look at that. Uh, um, what, what is it depend on? So, end up stage, that's end up itself. Yeah, okay. How, this is the first program from this is actually for everyone. This week, I think, but the short time, that can change experts, this, it is exactly the much basically Yes, what I mentioned about the shoe, how it happened. Let's open this. That's it. Because of Emma, we use this particular to get yes, platform. That's I think about it. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? That's something. The thing died. The battery died. The battery died. Mic. And I just put it on now. I think it's recording. So sorry for breaking transmission. What I can now do now, like I mentioned before, is to probe. I can now I've confirmed that I have access to that guy. So I can now decide to probe and then I'll use the scripts.
Is the FTC our interest?
Yes, after FTP, we'll go to another protocol. We'll try other protocols after FTP. Type C, yes. Are we together now? So I would try to, I always prefer to use the script argument. And then because we check, let me show you. So let's see something. It says download. Let's do a brief research on this guy. Let's see where this guy will lead us to. Oh no, this one is not what I'm interested in. Nope, I'm not interested in you. Let me see. Okay, what is here? It says hmm. So here, what I'm doing now is I'm trying to analyze what that exploit itself is doing. That exploit, the script itself is doing. That would give me the basis of what I would tweak. Because I need to know what the exploit is doing before I can tweak it. Not necessarily, and it's just basically understanding what is going on there. And what I'm seeing here, I can just identify that it's using a CMD command. So what I want to see is if I can probe using CMD. Let me just see something. So if I do CMD equals to, let's say, who am I? You understand? Who am I to know who I am? What do we notice? Do we notice anything? Do we notice anything between this command, this result, and this result? So what more does this guy have? The second one. Remember, I've added the query for it to tell me who am I. Hear what I'm saying? I told it, who am I? I told you, give me my results. Good. Meaning with this, I'm able to run arbitrary commands on the network. Yes, it's the command that I gave it that displayed it. Let's try something else so we understand better. Since I've confirmed that the CMD works, let me try LS. Let's see if I can list anything. Can we? Do you see what I'm saying? So that I've been able to list the files. Yes, to list all the files that are that directories inside our network. Did you get the same result? Do you understand what I'm saying now? Exactly. Yes. And guess what I use? Just nmap. But guess Metaspace could not do it. Metaspace had problems with it. But manually I've been able to do it. That's why it's very, very important to understand both manual and automatic. Because most times people go for the automatic and they feel like, oh yes, they are fine. Do we understand? So let's see if I can get passwords. Let me see LS. Let's see. What command now? What command do we use to get passwords? Remember, this is a CMD. What we are doing, we are running CMD on this thing. So let me see. It is a password. I don't think this will work. I don't think it will work. To not work. Okay. Set permission denied. Set permission denied. I cannot use sudo because if I use, for me to use sudo, I need to know a password. So I don't. So let's try. Okay, let's try to query it like this. Let me cut. Let me see if I can cut it. You know what this is now? To cut. To read something. Voila. Voila.
They give you the password or
It's been able to cut the content of the EPC password file folder for me. So this guy is here are a list of all the passwords in that application. And if we cross check, we see MSF admin here and with the password of MSF admin.
how do you know the password that you
These are usernames. Everything on the left here is a username, but everything inside is the password. So we have MSF admin here, and we also have MSF admin here. Tells us home. That's what I'm saying. We are analyzing everything that is inside. We're analyzing everything that is inside. We're just taking note of what. Yes, we use cat to reach. Here's the command. Yes. So let's say we can go. Let's go shadow because I mean we know that passwords are stored in the shadow directory. Are we? Exactly. So let's go the shadow. Let's see. As you can see, it brings us back here. But the readable text is what is the password file. So among all of this here, which of this looks like would be a password? Would be a username, let's say. Among everything we have here, daemon, beans, blah, blah, blah. What looks like would be a username among everything you see there? What do we think would be a username? Tomcat. Tomcat is a protocol. Postgres is also a protocol, is also a service name. This cannot be a username. Huh? Are you sure you use the command we use? Yes, password. So what are we saying is the username here and the password? MSF admin. MSF admin is the username. So let's try to log in FTP. That's what I'm saying. So when you see a bunch of data like a bunch of password like this, it's imperative that you analyze and look at everything. Yes, everything. You analyze everything. What I'm saying is this. Daemon is a service. That's what I'm saying. That's why I asked what looks like to be a username here. Daemon cannot be a username because daemon is the name of a service. Beam cannot be a username because Beam is also the name of a service. Same thing with C, same thing with sync, same thing with games. Because the password directory doesn't just contain passwords of usernames, it contains password of every service there. You just a dump of passwords, every password that's what is there. So now it's imperative of you to know which of this looks like the username credentials for a user, not a service. Because remember, we are trying to log in as a user. Does it make sense? Exactly. That's why we pick MSF admin, because it looks like what would be the username of a user, MSF admin. So now we will now log into FTP using that. So let's say FTP 192, which is our IP address. Are we together? Enter. It tells us the name is our username. So we type MSF admin. Password MSF admin. And as you can see, it says login successful. Are we together? Yeah. Just log in. Mine is .102. It's only just going to be different. Have you tried logging in? What did you use? FTP space. Is that the IP? No. Is that the IP address of your metasploitable machine? It's sure. It's FTP that is the issue. FTP is not installed. So yeah. You can just use Tmux instead. Use Tmux since you're using Parrot. No, this is Parrot, so just use Tmux. So why did it? Maybe you have to install FTP actually. Because you have to install FTP as. Well, why is that not working? Do you understand? Do you understand so far to this point? Huh? Okay, we should go over the sequence again. Okay, no problem. Just install FTP. Sudo apt install FTP and then you'll be fine. So let's go over now let's even confirm something. So let's list the content of this. Let's go to the now. This is the content of the root directory after logging into the FTP. This is the content of the roots. Just take note. As you can see, bin, CD-ROM, dev, etc, home, blah, blah, blah. Can you all see that? Now let's confirm it to what we listed when we use nmap. If nmap actually got it. Sir? You say what? Log in, Abby. So that's it. So what I'm saying is, let's list the files that are in the FTP directory upon logging in now as the user. Like I want us to compare if what we actually did, listing the contents using Nmap, was actually correct. If we actually had access to it, to be sure that we do the same thing. Now, you see that we have the bin, boot, CD-ROM, dev, etc, home, whatever here. Now, mind you, we are still in FTP. You can see here. We are in FTP. This is FTP. Now, let's scroll up and see when we used Nmap to list. Do you see that it's the same thing? Boot, CD-ROM. See that it's the same thing. So we were able to actually list the content of what is inside Nmap, inside FTP, without actually logging into using FTP, just using Nmap. So what we did was we moved from manual. We used manual basically to exploit the system before now logging into the system, and we confirmed that we're actually able to do. So let's just run over as you mentioned from the start. So yes, first things first, we discovered the network IP address, we confirmed connectivity, then we ran a network map scan on our targets. And we saw a bunch of services that went on our service, our target. Then we decided to check for the version, because the version is what's going to determine how our exploit is going to go around. Now, we searched for version using the SB command, and we were able to see that our FTP is running VSFTPD 2.3.4, SSH is running that, and the rest of that. Now, upon using that, we now decided to check for our version of the exploit on Metasploit. Now, upon using Metasploit, we searched for VSFTPD 2.3.4, which is the service we are looking for, the exploit we are looking for that service. Now, sometimes you might not know the exact name of the exploit, but you know the service. There's a tool on Kali called SearchSploit. Sure to be on this thing too, on Parrot. So just let's exit FTP. It says goodbye. Now, if we type in SearchSploit, and we type in that VSFTPD 2.3.4, that's the name of the version, our service version. If we type in SearchSploit, SearchSploit is going to go and check for exploits all around, tell you if the exploit actually exists. And as you can see, it tells us the exploit exists, and it even tells us it's the Metasploit module. I don't know if you can see that. Do you understand? It tells us that it's the Metasploit. So using this now, we can now go to Metasploit to go and check that yes, we were told that you have the exploit. So now, we come back here and search Metasploit, we search for our exploits. We found it here, and then we found it here, and then we interacted with it. We told it, oh, use this guy, use 0, because that's the number. Use 0, and then upon typing using use 0, it's defaulted back to this, and then we search for options. Yes, use 0 is the number. Sometimes you can have multiple exploits on VSFTPD 2.3.4. So it is now left to you to decide the exact one you are looking for. So you can have like 5 of them. So me saying use 0 is saying use this one that is number 0. You can have 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I say use 4. You mean use the fourth one there, use the third one there. That's why I type use 0, because that's the number there. So I type use 0, and then it found its way to use that guy. Then we click on the options, and then we said that we were supposed to set our R host, our target host. We set our target host to the IP address of our machine or the network we are trying to break into. Then when we searched options to confirm, we saw that we had actually inputted our IP address. Then when we ran the exploits, it told us something. It said it found a shell. Command shell session was opened, something happened. Now, here is my deduction. My deduction is this. There is probably a system that is kicking us out when we try to log in a shell. Because it said it found the shell, the command shell opened, but the session refused to start. Meaning the exploit worked. Something just kicked it out. Are we together? That's why it did not work. Metasploit was unable to give us our shell. Because else, we would have found this shell, would have found the back door already. But we decided not to give up there and decided to go the manual route. So that manual route now led us to the point of us making research on that particular vulnerability, that exploit. And we came and we used the Nmap script itself. So we searched, and Nmap told us about the vulnerability. This is used to test for the presence of the VSF-TPD backdoor reported on this date. The script attempts to exploit the backdoor using the unconscious ID, blah, 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 blah. Then it says the command to execute in shell is this. Then it gave us the usage command we want to use that script. And then what we did was copy this and edited it. And as you can see here, we edited this, repeated our IP host, and then we're able to get a result telling us that, oh yes, this guy is vulnerable. And we saw the root. From there, we began to probe, we began to tweak, and then we added more commands to it. And then we first asked it to tell us who we are, which is who am I, to see if this was going to work. And then it told us, oh yes, I am root. And then from there, confidence came, and then we now started to list content. We listed content using the ls command instead of who am I this time around. Because I mean, it's telling us I am root, meaning it has had access to the root directory. So list the content of the root directory for me. It listed this for us. We told it, what now? Cat passwords for me. And then it catted the passwords here. Catted the passwords for the root directory for us. If we log into FTP now and navigate to that directory, we will see these passwords there. We just found a way to do it without necessarily logging into FTP. It's more as though we compromise the system without credentials. That's because we found an entry point, and then from there, so we use the password we got from here to log into FTP. And then that was it. And that's it for FTP. Do we have any questions or uncertainties? It's quite easy. What? Any question? Any questions, sir? Please, okay, test rate comes by default now. Or it's not. Okay, you have to change and it's also spreads also. Okay, so now let's try now. All of this Jama was for just one protocol, FTP. So let's try maybe one more or two more before we call it a day today. Let's look at what now? IRC. Let's look at this guy. IRC. Or let's try should we start with SMTP? SMTP. Well, so I'm asking which one we should go for. Should we go for SMTP? Or let's try SMTP. SMTP is on port 25. There is only postfix SMTPD. Let's see if we can find anything related to postfix SMTPD. So let's see if we can actually. But this is the thing. SMTP is a mail system. It's a mailing. SMTP is a mailing service. It's used for mail, used to relay mails and all of that. So we cannot necessarily exploit SMTP. Actually, what we can only do is to enumerate SMTP to tell us the users it has, valid credentials and stuff. We cannot actually exploit SMTP. I don't know if you get what I'm saying, because it is not a system of storage. It's just a mailing system, a mailing protocol. So what I think we should do is I think we should use Metasploit table for this. So let's type our MSF console this time around. Hopefully this guy works this time, and let's search for SMTP, right? We have a bunch of things under SMTP. But then now let's remember something. When we were discussing earlier today, we mentioned that there are different kind of modules in Metasploit, right? Aside exploits, and aside payloads. What else did you mention? Mention that there's an auxiliary. So now, remember that this time all we are trying to do is we're not trying to exploit SMTP. We are trying to make SMTP give us information. Meaning, what are we looking for this time around? What type of module are we going to use? What type of module are we going to be? An auxiliary module, exactly. Because of what we are trying to look out for. Does it make sense? So now, when we type SMTP, we want to look at auxiliaries. We want to take note of the auxiliaries and look for that which fits into what we are looking for. So we see that there is an auxiliary. This one is SMTP, post at SMTP. That's not what we are looking for. Let's search for other auxiliaries. There is auxiliary SMTP relay. That's not what I'm looking for. There is an auxiliary for the, okay, this one says simple fuzzer, as you can see the description here. Okay, there's another auxiliary here that says scanner. SMTP enumeration. This one is to user enumeration. I think we should use that guy. This one here that says user enumeration. To see if we can enumerate users. Are we? So now, note, this is what now? This is 41. You can see there. That's 41. So it means I'm going to type use 41.
So what is the difference of that number?
I have to tell Metasploit because now I've asked it for a bunch of data. Because I want to use that guy, I have to tell it the one I want to use. So when I type in use 41, Metasploit is going to load the exploit of that 41. That's what it does. That's why I have to identify the number. So when I type in use 41, remember it is auxiliary scanner SMTP, and then you will see that that's where it's going to load for me. When I type in use 41, as you can see, it has loaded the scanner for me. That's the scanner SMTP, and then whatever. So remember, as we said before, options. We want to know what are the deliverables here. Tells me just identify my R host. We know what our R host is now. The target host. So let's set our R host to 192.168.56.102. Oh, sorry, mistake. 192.168.56.102. Options. You can see, so the target port is port 25, which correlates to the SMTP port, as discussed earlier. And then, so what it's going to do is this. It's going to fetch, it's going to contain, it has a username or it has a list of usernames. It's going to cross-check if there are users that match. It's going to do like put a mini brute force to check if the usernames on my list exists on this SMTP server. So if it does, I as an attacker can now use that list to correlate my own word list that I can use for brute forcing. I don't know if it makes sense. Let me run it first. So let's run. It's taking a little bit of time to do that. Let's see what it comes up with. What I'm saying is, It has a word list that it uses. It has a group of usernames that exist on email servers. Now it's going to do a matchmake of those usernames to find if they exist on that SMTP server, on that mail server. And it will tell me, okay, these 5 users out of my, let's say, 1 million word list, these 5 users exist on this server. Now, I as an attacker can now use those 5 usernames to make my own word list that I can use to brute force another protocol. So don't think of it as me gathering information, but I'm gathering accurate information. The video is going to be on YouTube. That's why it's always important to. Well, I believe by next week we should have installed everything, so we'll be together. We'll not be having. So that was why it was part of the things I was asked for us to install Metasploitable. It's just a box. So someone said you need a video. The video is recorded on YouTube now. It's there. Eugene, it's on YouTube now, right? Someone, okay. Yes. Ma? ST. Dash ST. Small letter S, capital letter T. Yes, yes. IP address. IP address. Version is SB. Yes. And then note that you can call it. So this is the thing, you can, Nmap allows you to add so many things to your scan. Meaning you can scan for version at the same time, scan for OS at the same time, you can scan all the things at the same time. Just be adding ST, SB, SO. As you can see, I was adding arguments to my own in order to list exactly. So it's just depending on what you're looking for. The one that determines how you want to work around. This thing is taking a little bit of time. Let's just wait. It's taking time to exactly. I believe that's right. So let's just wait while it probes the network. Little bit of time. Okay, while this is doing, let's test run another protocol. So we say let's try IRC, which is what's what now? Unreal IRCD. So let's copy that guy. This port 6667 IRC. So let's see what we can find out from that guy. Let's first things first. Let's run. Let me open a new tab. Let's do a search exploit on Unreal IRCD. Okay, we have a backdoor command execution, as you can see here. And this is Metasploit, anyhow. So should we try to, right, so let's MSF console. Okay, so our SMTP animation is done. And here's what it says. It said it's found some users. Found backup, beam, daemon, FTP, blah, 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 blah. Mail. Can we, now, let's cross-check. It says it's found, so we can cross-check like this. Let's exit Metasploit. Let's use telnet to cross-check. Yes. If we do telnet 192.16, my target machine dot 56.102 falls on port 25 because it's SMTP now. Remember, telnet allows anyhow connection. Let's just see this. Now, yes, because SMTP I'm trying to relate it now. Now, if it says, now as you can see, it says connected to the ESMTP postfix, which is the mail. I'm trying to cross-check if the usernames, the users that this guy found for me actually exist. So if I use verify, and I try, let's pick one user, let's say backup as seen there. You see that it returned a 252 for me, which is the success code. I'll show you why. If I type verify and I type my name, what it is, that user is unknown, meaning that user does not exist. But now if I type verify, and let's see another user, let's say James, as you can see here, James, you can see success message. Does it make sense? Are we good? Any questions? We can always cross-reference that with the usernames we got here. Did we cut usernames here? Yes, when we checked our password files for the users, we see that there were some users. So games, as you can see, games, Bing, stuff like that. These are users that existed. Backup. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. You understand what I'm saying? Like the users we saw when we tried to cut passwords before. You see that the actual users, because they exist in the mailing system. So yeah. So we've been able to reference and identify that, oh yes, these users exist. And then by using the wrong username, we saw that, oh yes, it's actually cross-checking for an actual list of users. Yes, the enumeration false. So just using FMTP, just using an auxiliary, we've been able to enumerate usernames of users on the server. Now let's do the last one for today. Let's do this IRC. I'm getting tired already. So yes, let's search for Unreal IRCD. Okay, we find an exploit. So we are going to use 0 this time around because that's the only one there. Use 0. So let's set options. Let's look what the options are. The options are our host, our target host as usual. Set our host 192.168.0.56.102. Options. And let's just run our exploits. You see? Okay, what do you say? The payload has not been selected. Let's payload. This guy wants us to set the payload manually. Okay. Automatic exploitation problem. Let's go the manual route, please. Let's do a research on that vulnerability. Let me exit Metasploit. CB. Okay. Now, let's do a research on that exploit and see what we can. Okay, so Say backdoor command execution. Let's There's a GitHub link here. There's a GitHub link. Let me see what that guy is. So this is a Python version of the Metasploit model that exploits a known vulnerability. I know this exploit is blah 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 blah. Okay, so let's use this guy. Let me see what the README is saying. Okay. So let's use the GitHub the GitHub exploit version, the Python module of the Python version of that exploit. So now let's see. So for this one, that's a small Python. So but first let me clone the this is the command to clone that GitHub. So just clone this guy. And so just cd into, because it has now become a directory once you clone it. ls to the exploit.py. Let's look at what is inside a Python file, because I'm sure you need to know what's going on inside Python file. So you can see there are so many things. Okay, we'll just read the comments here. This is used to set the target IP in the ID pass. Then this is used to set the local IP and port to listen on. Guys, they've changed this. So we're going to just change this thing here. And we have to change it to what now? The port to listen on and the address to listen on. What address are we supposed to listen on? Yes, because there's nothing there. As you can see, there's no address there. It's telling us to change that. If not, that exploit will not work. You have to specify. So how are we supposed to listen? What address are we supposed to listen on? That's our target. What address are we supposed to listen on? This IRC. We're supposed to listen on our own machine, which is our IP address. Like you are the one that is the attacker, you're the one listening. So the expert has to find the route back to you. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. It needs to know where you are for it to access you. Because your payload is going to work. The payload has to know where it's originating from. So I need to know where to turn myself back to. Exactly. So how do I do that? By identifying my IP address. So just yes, we're trying to see how we can get a shell most likely for that particular exploit. So let's type ifconfig. So this is my IP address. 192.168.1, which is the adapter that. So I'll just edit this man here. 192.168.56.1. Are we get now? And then for port, we just port a, let's say 444. The port to listing on. And then I think that should be all for this guy. Or do we want to check any other thing? Any other thing that we think needs to be any other thing? These guys were in quotation marks, so let's put them. So these things, small things might make them not work. Anyways, let's just save this. All right, so we identified what's the name. So because it's a Python script, Because it's a Python script, first things first, let's find a way to let's start a listener. And we have to send that exploit using a Python payload. Python payload, yes. So let me split this guy into top and bottom. So let me start a listener on
when you go over the remember when I said one man.
David, David, are you done? All right, thank you. Thank you so much for being a part of today's section. Hope we learned a lot. Okay, please, this is available on YouTube. So you can just check SciTech Academy on YouTube and the video is there. All right, to our online community, I hope you learned. We were expecting questions, but we did not get any question. But if you have any question, you can drop it via the WhatsApp group. Please, if you are not on the WhatsApp group and you want to join, you can kindly indicate in the chat section so that we'll share the link there right now. In the absence of questions, we'll be rounding up, but the live session will still be up so that if you want to join the WhatsApp community, I can share the link with you. Once again, thank you so much for staying tuned to the end of today's session. I hope you learned. We look forward to having you all again next time, as next week, Saturday. And we will be exploring a new topic that will be unveiling during the course of the week. So thank you very much and do enjoy the rest of your weekend.